Please be seated. Thank you. I want to say Pastor Jerry is not here today. He drove out to California yesterday. It took him a really long time and hit snow, hit traffic, and anyway, he's there, he's safe, he's with his parents, and I think they might be watching, so hello, love you, and his sister as well, Alani, and I will be joining them tomorrow afternoon. I'll be flying out, though. What took him 13 hours will take me 2.5, so anyway, it's good. It'll be a good time, and reuniting with family. We have a lot of family in the Southern California area. So how many of you have really studied or done a lot of research on just what first fruits is and what that even means? I know there's a handful of us in here that have. I think it's going to be a familiar concept, but there's a component to it that the Lord wants to bring into its fullness, I believe, today. And I hope to be able to communicate that in a way that fleshes it out for us. There are 3, actually, first fruit offerings during the year. I don't know if we ever even thought about that. I often think of, there's just the one right after Passover, but there's actually a couple more. So the one that we're in right now, who knows? It's barley. It's barley, and it's set to on the morrow after the Sabbath, after Passover. So we had Passover happened to be on a Saturday night, Sunday this year, and so the morrow after the Sabbath is a Sunday. So that put us a whole week later going into first fruits, which will be tomorrow. And then if you read the verses about Shavuot, which is 50 days later, it's always on the morrow after the 7 Sabbaths that you count. So that will always end up being on a Sunday as well. The other first fruit offering that would come then is at Shavuot, and that's on the 50th day, and that's when we bring the grain offering. That's when you bring, after all those that have thrown our sourdough starters out, we're going to bring them back and start baking our bread, and we'll have them ready for Shavuot. So we're supposed to bring our 2 loaves of bread then. I think we need to do a class in here, sourdough cooking class. Lori's down. Anyway, and then in the fall, there is another harvest. There is another first fruit offering, and it comes from when they first came into the land. But it's when you are looking at bringing in your harvest, you bring the first of what you see, and that's at Sukkot. And did anybody know? And it may seem odd to us. That's actually the early rains. We're in the latter rain right now. And isn't that an interesting thought? Because we often talk about the spring feast days as having been fulfilled by Yeshua. However, it is the latter rain. And the early rain will be is in the fall, and that is the yet to be fulfilled feast days. So just to shake up our mindset a little bit. Continuing on the theme of intentionality, is this something that is changing your thought processes? Is this something you've been thinking about and through the week and being intentional? All of these things tie into first fruits, because the first fruit, let me just say it right here. So this is how first fruits works. A farmer will go out and check out his field, check out her field, and be like, how are things going? Nothing's popping up yet. Let's see over here. Oh, look. Oh my goodness. Caden, camera, stay with me, please. I meant to warn you in advance. Look at this beautiful first fruit that came up. And then they'll mark it. They bind it. They usually would put a ribbon. I have rubber band here that broke. But it's marked as their first fruit. And then when they were going to go take the offering, they'd grab a basket, which I also happen to have, and will put their first fruit in the basket and then bring it to the priest, up to the altar, and say, my father was a wandering Aramaean who took us into Egypt. And then we were rescued out of Egypt. And this is my offering to say thank you, Yahweh. Thank you for bringing us out of bondage. Thank you for showing us that there's a better way than where my forefathers brought us into. It's a funny thing to say, but it's that and it's out of Deuteronomy 26, 1 through 11. But the wandering Aramaean, it just means you were a foreigner. You didn't know where you belonged. You kind of just ended up there. We kind of just ended up here, okay? Some of us know exactly. We can trace our lineage. We can say, yeah, my forefathers came over on the boat from, wherever it is. But some of us don't know. We've always just been Americans, We've always just grown up in the USA. And, we do the things. We do Easter on Sunday. We do all these other holidays. We worship on Sunday. And now, all of a sudden, someone is telling us that the things that you thought were gone, that's your inheritance. That's actually the land that I've taken you, that I want to restore back to you. That's your inheritance that was stolen by the traditions and the lies of our forefathers. They are innocent in that, but when you know, you are accountable. And that is part of that first fruit offering. So it's the faith in saying, look at this. This is beautiful. I believe the rest of my field is going to be just as amazing. Just as Yeshua was our first fruit, and everything that's part of him, all the branches, are going to be holy too. So there's more to this object lesson I'll share in a little bit. I'll put these so you can still see them. They're beautiful. So let's see here. What do we have next? So the Hebrew word and the plural is bikurim, first fruits. And typically the things that they would count as those in the land are wheat, barley, grapes, figs, pomegranates, olives, and dates. All the things that we like to eat, right? And salt. Yes, salt. Salt is with all of our offerings. Bikurim and Shavuot. So these things all tie together. That's why we say the spring feast days, because every single one of these connects. You start, in fact, even the new moon and the Hebrew month we're in, the biblical name is Aviv. The pagan name, or the name that was given to it later, is Nisan. But Aviv means like, hey, the barley is in Aviv, meaning it's ripe. So it's the month we're in, and it starts with the new moon. And then 14 days later is Pesach, Passover, which we just did. And then we go into first fruits. And from there, we start counting day one, counting of the Omer. Now, if any of you are confused, well, let's just read these scriptures here. Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the children of Israel and tell them, when you have come into the land which I give to you, and you reap its harvest, then you're to bring the Omer of the first fruits, of your harvest to the Kohen. He is to wave the Omer before Yahweh to be accepted for you. On the morrow after the Shabbat, the Kohen is to wave it." And they say, like, if you read even accounts from Josephus, that the priest and the person bringing the offering would do it together. It was kind of a thing they do together. On the day when you wave the Omer, you are to offer a male lamb without blemish, 1 year old, as a burnt offering to Yahweh. Why don't we do that anymore? Because Yeshua. The grain offering with it shall be 2/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil, an offering made by fire to Yahweh for a soothing aroma. Its drink offering with it shall be 1/4 of a gallon of wine. You're not to eat bread, roasted grain, or fresh grain until this same day, until you've brought the offering of your God. Our offerings need to go first. That's important. We need to offer ourselves first. It's a statute forever throughout your generations in all your dwellings. Then you are to count from the morrow after the Shabbat, from the day that you brought the Omer of the wave offering, 7 complete Shabbatot. Until the morrow after the 7th Shabbat, you are to count 50 days and then present a new grain offering to Adonai. You're to bring out of your houses 2 loaves of bread for a wave offering, and this is, we'll recall, Shavuot, and we now have hametz, yeast, leaven, in our food. So the Sadducees did not believe in the resurrection. So what do you think first fruits meant to them? It's an interesting thing. This is why Paul so often would address this issue. In 1 Corinthians 15, he talks about it a lot, where there is a hope for where we're going when we die. This isn't the end right here, this earth. It makes me wonder what they really did hope for. It was kind of a sad thing, you see. But now Messiah has been raised from the dead, the first fruits of those who have fallen asleep. So he is the ultimate first fruit. He's gone before. He looked at the harvest and he said, I'm going to be the first fruit, but all of you are going to be holy and you're going to come after me. And it's a walk of faith. It's an offering brought by faith. When you go to tithe, for instance, some of us, that whole conversation, do we tithe on our gross? Do we tithe on the net? Well, if we understand the concept of first fruits, you would tithe on the gross. You tithe on what you've been given. And then from there, let everything else get taken out of it. That's not to condemn anybody in here, but that's a biblical concept. It's so we understand. So after Yeshua resurrected, how many times did he reveal himself to the disciples? And why? Why did he? Scholars say it was probably 12 times to the people that knew him beforehand, that he went 12 times to them. Not just those that he hadn't spoken to, but to those that knew him beforehand. There was a reason for this. It says in 1 Corinthians 15, he appeared to Kepha, Peter, and then to the 12. He appeared to over 500 brothers and sisters at one time. Most of them are still alive, though some have died. Then he appeared to Jacob, then to all the emissaries, and last of all, as to one untimely born, he also appeared to me, Paul. How cool. As soon as the word spread, the children of Israel gave generously the first fruits of their grain, their wine, their oil, their honey, and all the produce of the field, as well as tithe of all the abundance. So how do we apply this today? How many of us are farmers? How many of us have acres of land and grow crops? Probably not. Yeah, I'm not seeing one hand in here. I know farmers still do exist in America, but they're fewer and farther between these days. So what does this mean for us then? If we don't have crops and produce to bring, what are we bringing as our first fruit offering? Many of you came on on Passover, and it was your first Passover. Some of you, that was your first fruit offering. The fact that you showed up, the fact that you were there, the fact that you came and you offered your help cleaning up and setting up, all the things that needed to come together for that great event. It is like a giant wedding every year. It's a big deal, or a large wedding. It is a big deal. Okay, help me remember my thoughts. So what is your first fruit offering? How has God really revealed himself to you in this season? How are you trusting God to complete a work in your life? Tomorrow when we come together at 10 a.m., our first fruit offering, we're gonna have an open mic. That's scary for any pastor to do that, you know that, right? It's not a time to talk about all the things. It's not your testimony time, but it'll be a testimony, but it's gonna be the mini one. How has God revealed himself to you? How has he shown up in your life in this season? Come up and speak about it. That's your first fruit offering. If it's not something you feel like you can speak to, then say, how are you trusting God to complete a work in your life? I have what I know is the beginning of what I know God's doing, and I'm going to trust him to bring the rest. So I have my first fruit basket right here. And there's some things in here that I'm offering up to God that I know are his. Okay? So, this was very quickly put together. This is my husband and I offer up our marriage to God. This is part of my first fruit offering, that I know God is meeting us in our communication, in meshing us together as one, in all those areas that I know he wants to do a good work in our lives. This is a picture of our kids many years ago. I don't have one with us recently with all 5 of them. And now I have 2 more sons-in-law, and I offer all of them up to God. That's part of my first fruit offering, knowing the work that he began in my kids, he's going to see through to completion. It's an amazing thing to say, I trust you, God. I trust you for that. These, you're going to just think I'm a weirdo, but This is my bull nature. I don't have a stuffed animal bull. It's the areas where I've torn things apart. This is our dog. This is our grand dog that he's a little psycho. But these are the areas where I know that I have walked in sin. I've walked in areas that I don't want to walk in that kind of harsh nature anymore. I don't want to walk as someone that is critical, that can tear someone apart. So I'm offering that as well. Yeah, the rest, there's no more. We're good. Anyway, there's more, and there's obviously things that I'm sure that triggers things in you to think about of what you can bring. Part of our first fruit offering is being willing to come up to the mic and saying, I'm offering hope. That may be all you have right now to offer as your first fruit. Hope. Hope that God is going to meet me in the season I'm in. Some of us are in a heavy grieving season right now, and that's all we can cling to is hope. All we can cling to is our God and saying, he's going to get me through today. And I'm going to trust him to get me through all the next days. That's it. That's a first fruit offering right there. And it's a powerful thing to say, I love you and I trust you, God. It's the same thing. I see it in so many ways. It's that being intentional. When the children of Israel came to the waters and Pharaoh's behind them and they have nowhere else to go, and they look at the water and they go, first fruit offering. Step in, God parts the waters, and then they have a pathway. That's it. That's the walk of faith that we're called to, right? So how did the children of Israel and the mixed multitude coming out of Egypt honor first fruits? There was a consecrating that happened. There was a setting apart of all the firstborn from every womb of the children of Israel, both men and animals. Isn't that interesting? If it was a donkey, they broke its neck. It was no longer part of their service. If it was a person, a firstborn male, they were set aside. They were redeemed back. They were redeemed as set apart unto God. Now, that may seem exclusive, and it may seem like, oh, well, then I'm a woman. I don't have a part in that, or I'm not a firstborn. I don't have a part in that. There's a first fruit anointing that is on every single one of us that walks in the things that God calls us to. When we walk in the covenant of Torah, when we say, yes, we will obey. Yes, we want to have these covenants with you, Father. When we have many covenants in the Bible, right? There's the Abrahamic. That's the one that I hope we all have walked in already. The faith that we are saved through the blood and of Yeshua, and the adoption being a seed of Abraham. So it was a foreshadowing of the resurrection of Mashiach, right? Everything that happened then was always pointing toward Yeshua. Look at our Passover Haggadahs, our Seders that we walked through. Everything in that. How can you not see Yeshua in that service, right? Everything was about him, which is cool because it was a foreshadowing of what was to come. And it's also a remembrance of what Yahweh did for you when he brought you out from Egypt, the house of bondage. Let's go get rid of that. Okay. So when your son asks you in times to come, what is this? Say to him, by a strong hand, Yahweh brought us out from Egypt, the house of bondage. And when Pharaoh refused to let us go, Yahweh took care of that, didn't he? He slew all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both men and animals. So I sacrificed to Yahweh all firstborn males, but I redeemed the firstborn of my sons. So it will be like a sign on your hand and like frontlets between your eyes, for by a strong hand Yahweh brought us out of Egypt. Amen. This is all about the first fruits. This is the offering. So by his will, he brought us forth by the word of truth so that we might be a kind of first fruits of all he created. How many of you in your family are the first to ever walk with the Lord? Grown up in a family that maybe never even served God. That's a first fruit. You are a first fruit right there in and of itself. There's many examples in these things. One of the areas that I wanted to hit on, and I don't think I have it in my notes, is that the concept of crossing over. That word Hebrew literally means to cross over. It was because, and it came from Abraham. It came before we had the tribe of Judah. So if anybody is like, no, that's the Jews. No, Hebrew means Anyone in here that has said, I want to walk in your covenant of Torah, you've crossed over. You have said, yes, this is what I will do. And to cross over is a huge thing because you get the inheritance. You get the land. Everything that was promised in Deuteronomy 28, that's for us. Because it said, I'm making this covenant with not just with those who are standing here today, but with those who aren't here. Those who are yet to come, those who are in future generations. I made that covenant with you too. That's me. I stood there and said, yes, I'm making this covenant. My great-great-great-great-great-grandpa and grandma probably stood there and said, I make covenant. So thank you. Thank you to my generations. Have you crossed over? Have you decided that, yes, Yahweh, I know you've called me. I know you are calling me to something different, and I want that. I want to make that covenant with you, Yeshua. Because part of what is so incredible about that is that before they came out of Egypt, all of a sudden, what someone might have been doing in their regular everyday life, we talked about this last week, was suddenly they had some different habits that were being born in them, right? Suddenly they had some different ways that they were doing things. And they were learning to be intentional about how they were walking out. They had to go, oh, we're not just having a meal tonight, guys. We're going to have a meal in haste. We're going to put blood on our door. We're going to get ready to go. We're doing all the things that we need to do to get out of here. That intentionality. And in that process, God met them in a different way. So every time, there was a circumcision of the heart that said, I want to go with you. And when there was a circumcision and a coming out and a crossing over, the food, they had a different kind of food provided for them too. They got manna, right? And then when did the food change again? Can anybody recall? When they crossed into the promised land, they crossed over the Jordan River also. That's right. They were finished. And actually the cool thing it says first is that they ate the produce of the land first and the manna ceased. So it wasn't that the manna stopped and then they were like, oh, we got to go find food. They ate it first and then the manna stopped. So it makes me wonder, did some of them stay out here and eat manna longer than they needed to? And God's like, it's time to cross over. I want you to go. It's time. It's a good thought, huh? Romans 11 says, if the first fruit is holy, so is the whole batch of dough. And if the root is holy, so are the branches. How many of us in here feel holy? Maybe a little more today, but not so much, right? Not, oh, he's holy. Yeah, definitely, 100%. Yeah, but it is God, and that's the thing. He's the one that makes us holy. He's the one that causes us to be holy. It's a cool thing to think about that, and maybe it really isn't holy, but because God says it is, it is. It is. Maybe because we had enough faith to say, yeah, that harvest is going to be good. Even though it might have been plagued with blight, maybe it isn't going to be good. But because we speak into the Word of God, we speak with that authority, we speak with that faith, maybe God changes it in that moment. And now it is a holy, awesome harvest. Our words are powerful because He has given us the ability to create life and death, to speak life and death into things. So Romans 8:23, and not only creation, but even ourselves. We ourselves who have the first fruits of the Spirit grown inwardly as we eagerly wait for adoption, the redemption of our body. Yes, we know that we live here on this earth. We know this is where we are right now, but we know there's more, and we groan inwardly for that, don't we? Especially when we're going through trials and we're ready to be done. We know there's more, and Lord, take me home. But He says, not yet, not till your work is accomplished, not till my work through you is accomplished on this earth. So as servants of God, be those first fruit offerings that are willing to go forth, to go forward. Have you found community here? Then have you crossed over and said, this is my kahal? This is where I know God wants me to be. This is where He's called me. This isn't just yours. This is ours. This is something, I know Pastor Mark is going to speak on this more next week, but it's something that we have been really emphasizing, that this is our community. Katie said it, Pastor Katie said it today. You're my family. You're my people. I know you're here for me. That's an amazing thing to be able to say that you've got a lot of people that have your back on things. I know if I send out a prayer request to Jeff and Susie or to Kathy, that it's going to be prayed for. There's faithful saints that are going to hold that up in prayer. That's people going to battle for us. That's battle buddies right there. So bring the whole tithe into the storehouse, and there will be food in my house. Test me in this, says Yahweh. Test me with your little bit of faith like a mustard seed. If I will not open for you the windows of heaven and pour out blessing for you until no one is without enough. Test him in that. Bring your extra. You can bring an extra monetary offering as well. Ask the Lord about that. There is a blessing in doing so. We offered a little bit more at Passover. Offer more in these times. It's faith. It's saying, Lord, and I'm not asking for your money. I don't want your money. But God wants your heart on these things. And that's really what it comes down to is, are you willing? Are you willing to give the areas that are the hardest earned or the most, like your kids, for instance, those close relationships you have? Are you willing to say, I surrender those to you, God? What else? There was one more thing I had in my notes here that I think is important. Why did the next generation have to be circumcised? Can anybody answer that? Before they crossed, the second generation that came out of Egypt, before they crossed over into the promised land, why did they have to be circumcised? Joshua 5:9 says, I don't know if I have that verse up there or not. Let's see. Is it on my notes that you can see? No. Okay. Joshua 5:9 says to roll away the reproach of Egypt, to take that stigma off of you. There is still a mark on our lives that shows the world. It shows the things that we've walked in. It shows the areas until we allow God to cut that out of us, to circumcise parts. We're not done. It's layers, okay? We're like onions. There's layers. The day I have rolled away the reproach of Egypt from you, therefore, okay, so that's what the reason was for that circumcision, to know that I have marked you now with my mark. It's no different than the blood of the Lamb on the door. There's a mark of God and there's a mark of the world, and he says, I want to take that mark of the world off of you. So this covenant of circumcision now, because it was a covenant. It was showed, and that came through Abraham, that covenant of circumcision. So it showed that, and now you cross over, and now you're being called. And it's funny because it's sort of doesn't it take time to get circumcised? Don't we cross over and then God circumcises? Yes. Yes. He does all the things. He does it, it's here and he's doing it here, and it's multiple ways that he goes deep with us. It's not a one and done. It's not linear. He's not linear. He teaches us through the cyclical seasons, through why we do the feast days. It's why we show up, because he's teaching us always, and they're called reversals. Oh, can I get back to my slides? Thank you. So do the same with your cattle, with your sheep. For 7 days it's to be with its mother, and on the 8th day you're to give it to me. It is a consecration. This is part of that firstborn consecration. We're going to go into a portion next week, Shemini. It's in Leviticus 9, and it's about the priests being consecrated. They take their 7 days in the time with the Lord, and then he's going to bring them out on the 8th day. Guess what? We've been in unleavened bread for 7 days. It ends tonight. For all you that are looking forward to eating pizza, you can order it after sundown. Okay? Unleavened ends tonight. You can bring your sin back in. Just kidding. And then Sunday, that's an 8th day. That's a new beginning, isn't it? It's a first fruit. So, Kyla, I need control again. It's not working. Okay, there we go. So the first of all the first fruits of everything, every offering of every kind from all your offerings will belong to the Kohanim. You will also give the Kohen the first of your dough to make a blessing to rest on your house. So bringing that causes a blessing to rest on your home. I always think of that, the midwives of Egypt, that they feared only God, not Pharaoh. They even lied. There's times that it is righteous to lie to save a life. They lied to save a life and that's the greater Torah. It's understanding the spirit of the Torah and not the letter of the law. That there are times to lie to save a life, and they feared God more than man, and God put a blessing to rest on their homes. Pinchas, in his zeal, rose up and slew two people that were committing a heinous act in front of the tabernacle. It makes me think of how Yeshua went in with the whip and the money changers because he saw what was happening, the defilement going on in his tabernacle. He was zealous, and that zeal caused Pinchas to walk in a covenant of peace, not just for him, but his generations forever. Be those people of zeal that say, I want to have this kind of blessing to rest on my home. Rest on it doesn't mean it just touch your gun. It's no, I'm settling in. This is over your life. You're going to walk in shalom. This is going to envelop you and your generations. That's pretty cool. So lastly, honor Yahweh with your wealth and with the first of your entire harvest. That's out of Proverbs 3, 9, and 10. Then what happens when you do that? Your barns will be filled with plenty. Your vats will overflow with new wine. So some of these are not, like this is with the first of your entire harvest. That's interesting because, again, you don't know. You don't know if it's going to be good. There's times of drought, and people, can you imagine if people were doing this in times of drought and still saying, but I'm going to trust you, God, to meet our needs. And that's how Israel was able to build a beautiful, prosperous land in a desert, because they understood the principle of first fruits. This is how someone who is destitute right now or in debt, maybe you're in major debt, this is how you get out of it. You give. You bring a first fruit offering. You walk out of an area of bondage by giving, by opening yourself up in that exact area. If you have fear of pressing in, you have fear of relationships, then what you do is you come in and say, I'm giving this up. I'm going to press in. I'm going to start reaching out to people. I'm going to start texting people and developing friendships, seeding into people in those areas. Areas of bondage that we need release from, this is our first fruit. And you know what we're going to do at Shavuot? We're going to report back 50 days later and say, wow, this is how God met that amazing first fruit offering that I brought, the expectation that I brought. I want to share a quick story from a friend who came in the other day and said, I've just never been taught how to pray. I don't know how to pray. And we had someone in here disciple that person. Literally just in an afternoon, in 30 minutes, walked them through praying. They just walked and prayed together. And it was literally 30 minutes later, that person prayed in our circle. That's a big thing. These are areas that God is freeing us up in. That's areas that God's giving us authority. That's how God just extended that person's tent pegs and gave them more access, right, and favor. And that's the things that God is taking this kahal toward, is some of us that are new coming in, some of us that are helping to disciple, to walk through those things. So I think that's all I have for us right on this topic. Yeah. So I know, last thing I wanted to say in case you're confused. If someone has the calendars that we had here, and they are based on Hillel, and they are very good and they're very accurate. In fact, I hear that Jesus even used his days. But those calendars, the one thing that is a discrepancy is they do not count first fruits on the morrow after the Sabbath. So their Shavuot, I think, is on a Tuesday this year. They count Passover because Jews count Passover as first fruits now. The Seder plate with the herbs and everything on there, they're saying that's our first fruit offering. So they're counting the day one as the day of Passover. So that's different. That's not biblical instruction. So we do our best. There's some people that I know are celebrating it on June 1st. We have set June 8th. So if it's very strong in your heart that it needs to be a different day, then you celebrate it. But also come together here, because this is where your community, our community, right, is gathering. And it's important, and it means a lot when you're there, okay? And yeah, don't sow division, that's right. It's fine if that's your conviction, but yeah, let's gather and not scatter in those things. So Yeshua, will you stand with me? Yeshua, thank you for this teaching. Thank you for giving us your practical instruction. But thank you for going deeper in the spirit realms and ministering to our hearts on these things, that you show us what it means, that what you want from us, what are the first fruit offerings you're asking us to bring today. We thank you for that, Yahweh, as you minister to our hearts, you speak to our spirits, that we come with expectancy tomorrow, that we come with that offering. Even the offering of shyness, Yahweh, that I don't even want to speak into a mic. I don't want to stand up before people. But Father, that we see how important it is to the community to do that. The faith that brings, the faith building that brings. Thank you, Yeshua. And thank you for the meal. And we thank you for this feast of unleavened and how you've met us every day this week. In your name, Yahweh. Amen.